What if 5 survivors of rock's greatest implosions formed a brotherhood stronger than their failures? A band that didn't break up, they just stopped being together. One member's solo career explodes to number 1, while 4 others watch from the shadows. A founder walks away mid-tour, trading arenas for a sheep farm and a circus tent. Then came the diagnosis, and a final reunion not in triumph, but to save a dying man. This is the rise and fall of the Faces. London, summer of 1969. In a damp basement rehearsal space managed by the Rolling Stones, 3 musicians were searching for a future. Ronnie Lane, Kenny Jones, and Ian McLagan had just lost everything. Steve Marriott, the creative force behind the Small Faces, had walked out on New Year's Eve 1968 to form Humble Pie with Peter Frampton. The band that had delivered hits like Itchy Coo Park and All or Nothing was suddenly 3 men with a reputation, but no singer, no guitarist, and no clear path forward. Across town, another unit was imploding. The Jeff Beck Group, featuring guitarist Ronnie Wood and a raspy-voiced singer named Rod Stewart, was falling apart under the weight of Beck's volatile temperament and impossible personality. Wood and Stewart were left adrift, talented but unemployed in a music scene that was rapidly evolving. The connection happened organically. Ronnie Wood reached out to Ronnie Lane, and the two began jamming in that Stones rehearsal room. The chemistry was immediate. This wasn't about chasing hits or recreating past glories. This was about feel, about groove, about 5 musicians finding something honest in the chaos. Before we continue, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Rod Stewart was hesitant at first. He'd tagged along with Wood to the sessions, but wasn't convinced this ragtag assembly could become anything real. He was already signed to a solo deal and had his own trajectory mapped out, but something kept pulling him back to that basement. Years later, Stewart admitted the truth. He didn't join because of a musical epiphany. He joined because he got along with the group so well. This wasn't a manufactured band. This was a brotherhood formed by necessity and sealed by instinct. The transition from Small Faces to the Faces was anything but smooth. Record executives were desperate to keep the Small Faces brand name. It carried commercial weight, a proven track record of hits. But Wood and Stewart objected immediately. The name felt like a relic of a band they'd never been part of. A compromise was reached, though it confused American audiences for years. Their debut album, First Step, was released in March 1970 and credited to Small Faces in the United States. Fans sifting through record bins had no idea this was essentially a new band with only 3 original members. Yes, I will follow. The album itself was tentative, exploratory. Tracks like Flying and their cover of Bob Dylan's Wicked Messenger showed promise. But the band hadn't yet captured the ragged but right energy that would define them. Critics dismissed them as a poor man's Rolling Stones. Radio programmers didn't know what to do with them. They were opening acts, second-tier attractions, playing to audiences who were just beginning to realize that the guy with the raspy voice might be something special. But beneath the surface, a problem was already forming. Before the Faces had even released an album, Wood and McLagan had appeared on Rod Stewart's first solo effort, An Old Raincoat Won't Ever Let You Down. This established a precedent, the same musicians recording under 2 different labels, creating a legal and creative tangle that would haunt them for years. The question was already being whispered in industry circles. Was Rod Stewart a member of the Faces, or were the Faces Rod Stewart's backing band? By 1971, the Faces were finding their stride. Their second album, Long Player, featured the live favorite Had Me a Real Good Time and signaled a shift toward the boozy boogie that would become their trademark. Their live shows were chaotic, joyous affairs. Drummer Kenny Jones described every gig as a party where band members would frequently fall on the floor in airports, restaurants, and hotels. But 1971 is defined by one seismic event. Rod Stewart's solo career exploded. His album, Every Picture Tells a Story, and the single Maggie May transformed him from a band member into a global icon. Stewart achieved something unprecedented, the #1 album and #1 single simultaneously in both the United States and the United Kingdom. But for the Faces, Stewart's success was a double-edged sword. It guaranteed massive crowds on tour, arenas packed with fans who wanted to see the man behind Maggie May. But it also led to the billing that would poison the Brotherhood. Rod Stewart and the Faces? Ronnie Lane found it deeply insulting. He'd co-founded the band. He wrote songs. He poured his heart into every performance. But now, promoters were treating the Faces as Rod's backing group, and the audiences were screaming for Rod while the rest of the band stood in the shadows. The divide was subtle at first, barely visible beneath the partying and the sold-out shows, but it was there, widening with every tour. Late 1971 brought the release of A Nod Is As Good As a Wink to a Blind Horse. The album reached number 2 in Britain and number 6 in the United States, anchored by the single that would define them forever. Stay With Me was the ultimate party anthem, gritty guitar riff, Rod's raspy vocals, and the sound of 5 men who didn't take themselves too seriously, but played with absolute conviction. For many fans, this was the moment the Faces became the biggest draw in America, sometimes even rivaling the Rolling Stones as one of the biggest touring acts in the country. Their performances were loose, unpredictable, gloriously messy. While progressive rock bands were performing with complex light shows and high-concept lyrics, the Faces were just playing rock and roll, honest, emotional, human. But the emotional core of A Nod Is As Good As a Wink belonged to Ronnie Lane. His song, Debris, a tender ode to his father, Happiness Stan Lane, stands in stark contrast to the boogie rock surrounding it. Lane's father had told him that if he learned to play an instrument, he'd always have friends. The song reminds you that beneath the chaos and the drinking and the laughter, these were real men with real hearts, and Ronnie Lane's heart was already breaking. By early 1973, the internal dynamics were deteriorating. Rod Stewart was spending more time in Los Angeles, chasing his solo career and his burgeoning celebrity lifestyle. The dearth of affection, intimacy, and communication within the group had become undeniable. Recording sessions for their next album were troubled from the start. Ooh La La was supposed to be their follow-up to commercial and creative success. Instead, it became a document of a band falling apart. Rod Stewart was largely absent from the sessions, leaving the other members to carry the weight. When the album was released, Stewart publicly criticized it, calling it a bloody mess and not good enough. For Ronnie Lane, this public betrayal was the final straw. Lane had poured his soul into the album, only to watch Stewart dismiss it in the press. Lane was frustrated by more than Stewart's absence. He was tired of the champagne and private jets lifestyle that felt increasingly hollow. He'd joined a band to make music with friends, and somewhere along the way, it had become a corporate enterprise where he was a supporting player in someone else's story. On May 10, 1973, following a gig in Nassau County, Ronnie Lane announced his departure. The moment was ugly. A backstage riot where Lane swore at Ian McLagan, who responded by throwing a drink at Lane's head and attempting to kick him. The Brotherhood was now openly at war. Kenny Jones later reflected with brutal honesty. Once Ronnie Lane left the band, the spirit of the Faces left too. Lane wasn't just leaving a band, he was walking away from something that had once felt sacred. He would go on to form Slim Chance and move to a 100-acre farm, exchanging the limelight for the life of a sheepherder. He chose simplicity over stardom, peace over chaos, but the cost of that choice would be higher than anyone could have imagined. After leaving the Faces, Ronnie Lane embarked on one of the most eccentric ventures in rock history, the Passing Show. He traveled the UK in a convoy of antique trucks and caravans, pitching a circus tent on common greens to perform for small crowds. This was Lane's attempt to return to the authentic roots of music, away from the glitz and the arena rock machinery. It was a beautiful dream. It was also a disaster. The tour was poorly attended, poorly publicized, plagued by logistical failures. One sax player famously deserted the tour, leaving a note that read, "Goodbye, cruel circus, I'm off to join the world." Lane was hemorrhaging money, living on his ideals while the reality crumbled around him. But something else was happening, something far more devastating. Lane's behavior was becoming erratic, stumbling, slurred speech, moments of confusion that his friends attributed to drinking. In 1975, during a brief Small Faces reunion, his former bandmates misinterpreted his seemingly drunken tantrums as just another rock star meltdown. In 1977, Ronnie Lane was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. The disease that would eventually take his life had already been destroying his nervous system for years. Those erratic moments weren't caused by alcohol. They were the early symptoms of a devastating illness, and it was made worse by another betrayal. Lane had been massively ripped off at the start of his career. Despite the Small Faces' enormous record sales, the band members weren't paid royalties for nearly 30 years. Kenny Jones would eventually win that legal battle, but it came too late for Ronnie Lane to benefit. He had given everything to music, and music, or rather the industry surrounding it, had taken everything from him. While Lane was pursuing his gypsy dreams and battling an illness he didn't yet understand, the Faces continued as a four-piece. They added free bassist Tetsuya Yamauchi to the lineup, but the chemistry was gone. They were increasingly operating as a backing group for Rod Stewart, and everyone knew it. Rod Stewart moved to Los Angeles permanently. His first album, recorded in America, Atlantic Crossing, featured the hit Sailing and was produced using American session musicians. The other members of the Faces were excluded from the recordings. They heavily disliked Stewart's change in musical direction. The title of the album became a metaphor for Stewart's permanent departure, not just from Britain, but from the band itself. The final American tour in the fall of 1975 was a shadow of what the Faces had once been. Ronnie Wood was already on permanent loan to the Rolling Stones, having auditioned for them earlier that year. The irony is almost too perfect. Wood had actually been approached to join the Stones back in 1969, after Brian Jones's death. But Ronnie Lane had intercepted the call and told them, "Ronnie's quite happy where he is." Lane had kept the Faces together for 6 more years. Now, with Lane gone and Wood halfway out the door, the band was playing its final shows to audiences who sensed the end was coming. The Faces played their last concert on November 1st, 1975, at the Labor Temple in Minneapolis. Fans who attended those final shows recalled a band that was absolutely ripped, with songs falling apart at the end, followed by loud thank yous from musicians who were barely holding it together. The official split was announced at a London press conference on December 18, 1975. There was no farewell album, no final statement, no proper goodbye. They just stopped being a band. For those who had followed them from those early club shows to sold-out arenas, the ending felt incomplete. The Faces simply dissolved, and the men who had once been brothers went their separate ways. The aftermath of the breakup saw the members diverge into wildly different trajectories. Rod Stewart continued his superstar ascent, though critics often lamented that he had betrayed his unique talent for lightweight solo ballads. Ronnie Wood officially joined the Rolling Stones in February 1976, fulfilling his destiny as a proper rock and roller in one of the biggest bands on the planet. Kenny Jones replaced Keith Moon in The Who in 1978, stepping into impossible shoes with grace and professionalism. Ian McLagan became one of the industry's most respected session and touring keyboardists. But Ronnie Lane's path was different. As his multiple sclerosis progressed, Lane's financial situation became desperate. He moved to Austin, Texas, hoping the warmer climate might ease his symptoms. He continued to write and record when he could, but his body was betraying him. In 1983, the rock world rallied to help. The Action into Research for Multiple Sclerosis charity concerts were organized. The first major rock benefits focused on a medical cause. The inaugural show at the Royal Albert Hall featured an unprecedented lineup: Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Jimmy Page performing together for the first time. The who's who of British rock came together for one reason: to support Ronnie Lane. The highlight of the evening was Lane's appearance on stage. Lane led the entire cast of musicians in a rendition of Goodnight Irene. It was a moment of profound solidarity and forgiveness. Rod Stewart had initially been too embarrassed to participate, given the falling out between him and Lane. But eventually, the rock community's pressure and his own conscience brought him to the cause. The ARMS concerts raised over $1 million for research and gave Ronnie Lane a final moment in the spotlight, surrounded by the people who understood what he'd given to music. On June 4th, 1997, Ronnie Lane died at the age of 51. The disease had taken 20 years to claim him, but it had claimed him nonetheless. In 2012, the Faces were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame alongside the Small Faces, cementing their status as one of the most influential bands in rock history. Rod Stewart, Ronnie Wood, Kenny Jones and Ian McLagan reunited for the ceremony, performing together for the first time in decades. The one member who deserved to be there most, Ronnie Lane, had been gone for 15 years.
I left you on the debris.
The legacy of the Faces isn't measured in chart positions or platinum certifications. It's measured in feeling. They proved that the greatest music doesn't come from perfection. It comes from connection. From 5 musicians who genuinely liked each other, who played with joy and honesty, who strutted onto stage like they owned the world even when they were broke and exhausted. Their influence echoes through generations. Bands like the Black Crowes, the Replacements, and the Georgia Satellites all adopted the Faces' party band ethos, prioritizing energy and emotional honesty over technical perfection. The story of the Faces is ultimately a story about brotherhood, how it's formed, how it's tested, and how it can be broken without ever truly dying. They didn't break up with a fight or a scandal, they just stopped being a band. And maybe that's the saddest ending of all, not a dramatic explosion, but a slow fade, a quiet exit, a brotherhood that dissolved because life pulled them in different directions. But the music remains. Stay With Me still shakes arenas. Debris still brings tears. And somewhere in that tension between the party and the pain, between Rod Stewart's stardom and Ronnie Lane's sacrifice, lies the truth about what it means to be in a band, to build something beautiful with your friends, to watch it grow beyond your control, and to carry the memory of what it once was for the rest of your life. The Faces didn't chase perfection, they chased feeling. And maybe that's why losing them still hurts. They proved that the greatest harmonies emerge from the deepest friendships. But they also showed us that success doesn't guarantee happiness, and stardom can't hold a brotherhood together. Ronnie Lane chose sheep over stadiums and paid the ultimate price. But the music endures, reminding us what mattered most. What's your memory of the Faces? Drop it in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from rock's golden era.